Oh.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It's like stepping into a dream. You know?
I literally, when they killed off Captain Kirk in Star Trek Generations, I literally cried.
I believe it.
Yeah, because he's one of those you grow up with.
Who's the king? I didn't even notice until you walked in, and then I went. Was it?
Power supply went up. Power supply was dead.
Wow, that was an easy fix then.
Not really. Trying to buy the 12-volt, 5-amp power supply in Camden County is a little bit of a deal.
You guys, this is Eli. He's one of the neutral zone heads of the neutral zone that owns the facility here. And when we came in this morning, half of these lights were out. The flashing computer lights were out, and he just fixed them. So I want you guys to give him a big hand.
Thank y'all. The credit actually goes to Star Trek Continue's director of photography, Matt Busey, who programmed the Arduinos that run those lights. He taught me in about 30 minutes how this entire thing works. So
Matt and I came down here 6 or 7 years ago when we were all building this, and I would be working on sets, and Matt would be building these little light boxes that go behind here. Pretty cool, right? Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you remember that when you went to the briefing room, there were no chairs. And I'm sure Ray told you why, right? Here are the actual Star Trek chairs. And even these chairs are really not a big deal. Because once again, if you don't have a lot of money, you try to figure out a way to do a TV show in the future without spending too much money. So what you do is, you send one of your boys down to Kmart or Woolworth, and you tell them to buy 8 or 10 molded plastic chairs. And that is literally what they bought. They were probably white, maybe black, maybe gray. They certainly weren't robin's egg blue. So you buy 8 or 10 of these cheap chairs, you bring them back to the workshop at the studio, you spray paint them a cool color that you wouldn't find in the stores, right? Then they made a nice black seat cushion. Then they just designed some interesting back, cut it out of wood and upholstered it. And then the final finishing touch was grabbing probably a few scraps of wood laying around the shop and cut triangles and glued them on the back. Why? Just to be different. Didn't cost much, right? And suddenly look what you have. You have a chair that doesn't exist anywhere on planet Earth. You have a chair that you could not go to any store and buy. And it cost very little to make. Same with the captain's chair. Does anybody know that this is an actual chair? The chair itself, the upholstered chair with the armrests, is made by a company called Madison. In the 60s, they made executive office chairs. So they probably went and bought one. I have one at home. They went and bought one. They brought it back to the workshop, and all they did was build this cradle around it, put some buttons. Suddenly, it's a chair that doesn't exist anywhere except on this television show. I love that kind of, like we were talking about, that kind of imagination, just making something work out of what you have in your living room. When we shot Star Trek Continues, this entire wall wasn't here. The V-screen, we never got a chance to build it. And if you saw our series, you're like, well, I saw it on your show. That was CGI. Because we meant to build it. When we first started, we meant to build it. And then we started making episodes, and we had other things that we needed to build that were more important. We had to build a guest quarters, or we had to build an alien council chamber, or we had to build auxiliary control. So this was not a priority. We had the CGI version and we used it. Plus, all of this open floor space allowed us to set up big camera moves and let people in and out easily. So we left it open. And only about a year ago, did Neutral Zone Studios raise the money to actually build it. So this is the only one on the planet that I'm aware of that is actually to scale, which of course is important if you're trying to replicate something that exists. The screen is 4 feet by 7 feet. There's another replica of the sets, and they have a 85-inch flat panel television, which is a cool idea, except it's not to scale, which kind of, to me, defeats the whole purpose. There's only one television that would fit there, and it's an 100-inch flat panel, which is about 12 grand. So anybody feeling generous? We'll put a little nameplate. Donated by... What you're looking at right now is rear screen projection. There's a projector behind the screen. Crewman running around the ship. Any questions at all? Remember I was talking about the view screen, right? If we had all gotten on a bus and could have gone to Desilu Studios back in the 60s and watched them shoot, I would bet you any amount of money this would never be. It would be rolled off in the corner somewhere because they need all this open area to shoot. So here's what they would do. They'd roll it in one time, set the camera up, shoot that shot right there, just the view screen. Then they'd move the camera back and shoot again, only now you can see these guys in the foreground. And then they'd roll back one more time and shoot one more from back here. So now you see Kurt and those guys and the view screen. And then you just use those 3 shots over and over again. And then you roll it out of here and you don't see it for another 3 months, you know? Any questions?
Was Desi Arnaz a part of the production?
Well, not physically. Desi and Lucy started Desilu Studios. And I don't know if Ray told you this or not. A lot of people have been told over the years that Star Trek was canceled because it wasn't popular. It just didn't do well on television. That's a lie. It was canceled because it cost too much money to make. It was the most expensive show on television at the time. Did Ray talk about that at all when you were in engineering? Yeah, it was just impossible to keep up with the costs. In fact, I did an audiobook called These Are the Voyages that was about the making of the original series. And Lucy told her team, go find me shows that are unlike anything anyone's ever done. And they brought her 2 shows, Star Trek and Mission Impossible. And when they gave her Star Trek, they said, don't make this show, Lucy. They did. Her advisors said, don't make this show. It'll bankrupt your studio. It's just going to be too costly. She did it anyway because she wanted to make a mark. And guess what happened? It bankrupted her studio. So partway through the run, Paramount took over because Desilu went under. But it was not because it was not popular. In fact, the network wanted to kill it because it was too expensive. They kept cutting their budget. They kept putting it in crappy time slots where the viewership went down so they could justify canceling it. By the 3rd season, you watch the original series of Star Trek. By the 3rd season, the lighting was crappy. They didn't even have sets half the time because they were just limping along with the limited budget that NBC was giving them. And they still made great shows because the story was the point, not the sets. Any other questions at all? Anybody?
Vic, what's the science station scrolly thing? I forget what that...
Well, I don't know what it is, but it's cool, and it's so cool that they used it somewhere else in Star Trek. Does anybody know? Does anybody have a communicator on them by any chance?
Design on the...
That's the dial in the middle of the communicator. It does exactly that. Apparently they thought it was a pretty cool idea. In fact, Is that Nutella on your? Oh my gosh, I love Nutella. I just came back from overseas and I ate Nutella on croissants every morning. See the switches up there that are flashing on the console? Throw a couple of those switches and see what happens. The white toggle switches. Turn them all up. Up. See, look. Spot gets to even play up there. Gets to turn those on. Go ahead and turn it back on. Remember the rocker switches that were in the briefing room that don't actually do anything? These are real ones. These actually work. So we had a couple of them, so we figured this was a good place to put them. Sulu and Chekhov. So Sulu gets to turn on the proximity, or Chekhov gets to turn on the proximity alert if he wants. He gets to turn his console on. He gets to turn that on. Sulu gets to turn his viewer and console on. He gets to turn the astrogator on and off. It's funny how you get such joy out of such simple little things, you know?
What about these up here? Do they actually...
They don't. Now, see, when we shot Star Trek Continues, my chair, all of these things work. And when we finished, and Ray took over, I'm like, Ray, you can have everything, but I'm taking my chair home. So my chair is in my house. And it's an actual house. And all of these things work.
Now,
They're building another one right now. This one's going to kind of go on the road for like tours and exhibits and stuff, and they're going to build one that's all functional.
now what's the round buttons? What were they back in the 60s?
Oh, they were nothing. They were little. You know what they did? A lot of these buttons, these things, and the square ones and the round ones, they were like little ice trays, and they would just pour colored resin in them and just glue them on. So they don't do anything. But again, that's not the point. The story's the point. And occasionally, if they we have to have a close-up of him pushing that button. Well, okay, you can use a button that functions for that. But in general, they don't need to do anything. I'll tell you a funny story about the buttons. When we were shooting Star Trek Continues, I would have an actor play this role, right? And they'd sit down here, and they would do what you might expect. They would go, and when we finished our first episode, and I handed all of the footage to our sound man to do all of the sound design, he called me and he said, for the love of God, please tell them to stop pushing buttons. Because every time they push a button, I got to put a sound effect in. So we started telling all the actors, all right, look, just occasionally, you know, don't just do this. And that's what everybody does. Every fan film, right, they get in here and they're like, our sound man went crazy.
Have you ever met William Shatner?
Oh, yeah, Bill and I are good friends, actually.
Okay.
Bill and I have had the chance to spend a lot of time together. And we don't talk about Star Trek. Any other questions?
Well, that could be a very long conversation.
Yeah. I did finally, after spending many, many occasions with him, I got to tell him, he heard about this from fans. He didn't hear about it from me. He heard about our series from fans of our series. And I told him that we did all of this to pay tribute and to say thank you to him and Leonard and all of the actors and producers that made this show that meant so much to us when we were young. I told him he was a father figure to me. My parents divorced and my dad was gone. And Bill Shatner, Captain Kirk, was like a hero. He was my hero. So my childhood dream was to get to play my hero. That's why I rented this building and asked a bunch of people to build this, and we shot our whole series here. And if you've not seen it, please check it out. You'll love it.
What was his favorite episode?
Pardon?
Did he ever say what his favorite episode was?
He has gone on record as saying that City on the Edge of Forever, which was the one with Edith Keeler when they went back to the Depression era and the woman had to die. Kirk fell in love with her, but he had to let her die so that history...
Joan Collins.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Joan Collins. Yes. I have just a few more things to say, and then I'm going to let you guys just take pictures sit in the captain's chair, do whatever you like. Number one, thank you for being here. Our favorite thing, apart from having built it and shot our series here, is opening it up to allow people to enjoy it. Because we know there are a lot of people out there that would love it. So we're really grateful that you came. The second thing is, please donate. I know that seems kind of obvious, but the admission fee was pretty reasonable, wasn't it? I like to tell people it was free and at the same time priceless. And there are so many people that would love to do what you just did. And the only way that's possible is to continue paying the guy that owns the building rent, and to continue to pay the electric company their utility bills so that the lights can be on. So please do what you can to help out, because that money just goes to the hard costs of allowing other people to do what you just got to do for free. The last thing I will tell you is that I've got a table over here that I've got our entire series on Blu-ray and DVD. I would love for you to have a set of it. I'll sign it for you. I've got pictures from our series over there. I'm going to go sit there for a few minutes if anyone would like anything. Vanessa from Voyager is over here. Would love to meet you. So please come and say hello and enjoy. Take all the photos you want and tell your friends to come and visit. All right? Thank you guys so much.